In the frozen battlefields of World War II, soldiers learned that cold could kill faster than bullets. From the snow-choked forests of the Ardennes to the wind-torn steppes of Russia, frostbite claimed more men than enemy fire. Yet, amid this fight against nature, a quiet innovation emerged. A fabric treatment so effective it turned ordinary wool into a shield against freezing wind, water, and snow. Known only to a handful of military supply units and field engineers, this wax-coated wool helped soldiers endure temperatures that would have broken unprotected men. It wasn't just clothing, it was survival chemistry in its purest form. And, the science behind it still holds lessons for modern survivalists today. How soldiers learned that standard wool couldn't stand up to war's coldest fronts. Wool had long been the soldier's friend. It insulates when wet, dries faster than cotton, and traps warm air even under harsh conditions. But the winter of 1941 to 42 changed everything. On both the Eastern Front and in the mountain campaigns of Norway and Italy, troops found their heavy wool coats soaking through under sleet and freezing rain. Once wet, those coats became heavy ice blankets, draining body heat and stiffening into armour-like shells. Military quartermasters and field scientists realized they needed a way to make wool repel water without destroying its breathability. Rubberized fabrics existed, but cracked in the cold. Oilcloth worked, but was stiff and difficult to maintain. The solution had to be natural, field-ready, and simple enough for soldiers to treat themselves with limited supplies. That's when an old idea from sailors and explorers resurfaced: waxed textiles. The wax-coated wool process turned a humble fabric into battlefield insulation. The treatment began with something deceptively simple: melted wax mixed with a small amount of natural oil. Beeswax was the preferred ingredient when available because of its flexibility and pleasant smell, though paraffin wax and lanolin, derived from sheep's wool grease, were also used. The key was balance. Too much wax made the fabric brittle, too little, and it absorbed water. Soldiers or quartermasters would heat the wax mixture until it became a thin liquid, then spread it evenly across the wool using brushes, cloth pads, or even their hands. The coated fabric was then warmed over a fire or hung in the sun to let the wax fully absorb into the fibres. Once cooled, the result was a supple, water-repelling coat that remained breathable and soft. What made this method remarkable was that it didn't create a film over the wool. It bonded within it. The wax filled microscopic gaps between the fibres, preventing water droplets from penetrating while still allowing vapour to escape. In practice, this meant a soldier could march through sleet or snow for hours, and his uniform would shed moisture rather than soak it up. Now, let's talk about where and how this technique really made a difference in actual battles. Back in 1942, British and Commonwealth troops operating in Norway, and later on in the Italian Alps, started using waxed wool garments for their mountain operations. At the same time, German Gebirgsjäger, or mountain troops, treated their uniforms with special lanolin mixtures to get a similar effect. American soldiers picked up the idea during the Battle of the Bulge, where, honestly, sometimes improvised waterproofing was the only thing keeping frostbite at bay. There are even records of special Arctic kits being issued to certain Allied units, with tins of wax for reproofing coats and blankets. Out in the field, men would rub wax onto their greatcoats or leggings, then warm them up near stoves or fires. Sure, it wasn't perfect. Sometimes the smell attracted rodents, which was a bit of a nuisance. But it kept them alive in temperatures that dipped to -30. This process made its way to naval use as well. Sailors coated their wool gloves and mittens with beeswax lanolin blends to fend off sea spray and freezing winds. Even aircraft crews working on cold runways used the same trick, waterproofing their outer layers while keeping them flexible. So, how can you recreate and use this old-world method yourself today? Well, this lost technique isn't just a bit of history, it's something you can actually do using materials you'll find at any hardware or craft store. To make your own version of the WW2 wax coating, start with pure beeswax or paraffin. Melt it gently in a double boiler or a metal container set in hot water. Nothing too fancy. Mix in a small amount of boiled linseed oil or olive oil, about 1 part oil to 4 parts wax, to keep things nice and pliable. Lay your wool garment flat and use a brush or a rag to work the melted mixture into the fibres, just a bit at a time. Once you've got an even coat, heat the fabric gently with a hairdryer, a heat gun on low, or just hang it in the sun, so the wax soaks in fully. When it cools, the surface should feel a bit firm, but not sticky. If water beads up and rolls off instead of soaking in, you've done it right. This method is ideal for outdoor gear. Wool blankets, coats, mittens, hats, you name it. The coating also keeps out dirt and wind, so it's a real multi-purpose survival upgrade. You can even use it to waterproof canvas packs, boots or tents. For long trips, just reapply a thin coat every few months to keep up the performance. Exactly like soldiers did during the war. Now, why does this old innovation still matter in today's world of survival science? Well, what made wax-coated wool so important wasn't just how practical it was about sustainability. Long before synthetic waterproof materials were a thing, soldiers and explorers relied on natural chemistry to protect themselves from the elements. The mix of wax, lanolin and oil created a self-repairing barrier that could be renewed over and over, unlike modern coatings that wear out and shed microplastics into the environment. In a lot of ways, this forgotten fabric treatment was actually decades ahead of its time. It offered comfort, flexibility and durability without sacrificing breathability. Even today, high-end outdoor companies making wax jackets or wool camping gear are following almost the same principles. The only real difference is modern versions cost hundreds of pounds, while the W2 method could be done with just a few simple ingredients. For survivalists, knowing this process means knowing how to make do with limited resources. In freezing or wet conditions, treated wool can be the difference between comfort and hypothermia. It's also a sustainable skill, one that ties practical survival to historical craftsmanship. The secret of wax-coated wool that beat the blizzards of WCW wasn't just a technical trick. It was a story of human ingenuity up against the harshest forces on Earth. Soldiers used chemistry, patience, and plain old common sense to make their gear last in conditions that could destroy even the toughest machines. They didn't rely on mass production or fancy materials, just wax, wool, and willpower. Today, that same knowledge is there for anyone who values resilience, craftsmanship, and a bit of history. Whether you're a collector, a reenactor, or a survivalist preparing for the unknown, learning this old technique reconnects you with a tradition of endurance that spans generations. If this bit of lost wartime innovation struck a chord with you, Don't forget to subscribe to Echoes of Valor, share this video with fellow history enthusiasts, and help keep the legacy of practical wartime ingenuity alive. Because honestly, in every forgotten formula from the past, there's a survival skill for the future. And this one might just keep you warm when the next storm blows in.